into English again for the next session. But I will invite you to stay because we were talking about like climate, and the next session is properly related to climate finance and also the Paris Agreement. So I see here there are the two speakers of this session that are Vladistav Malashevskyy and Samuel Adunreke. Hi, Vladi. Hi, Samuel. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Hi.
Domenico. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Fine,
Okay.
thanks.
Fine.
Great. Thanks. So the track of today is the track of partnership, and we were like starting with the Talanoa dialogue, but then we run into sociocracy. That is also another way to like make decisions, and also then with Rodolfo we addressed the new ways of this decision making in the communities, like the citizen assemblies and new frontiers of deliberative democracy. And properly standing on decision, my question is for Vladi. What are the next decisions that we expect for COP26 and especially in the Article 6? And what is Article 6? So the floor to Vladi.
Hi, so I'll try to be really brief about these points in order to leave place for discussion. And I'll try to answer to Domenico in the most concise but also like understandable way. Article 6 under the Paris Agreement is, first of all, a really disputed article. And it's still one of the not yet finalized ones. And with this, I mean, not in the Paris Agreement itself, but in how to implement what this article says. This article is about it's like the financial and economical arm of the Paris Agreement. It's like its financial core. And this can be, well, we can agree with that or not, but at this time of history in our societies, like economy, it's quite an important point. I mean, decisions are taken based on economical evaluations. So we can definitely agree that it can be viewed as a good thing or not. I personally think that this should be discussed as soon as possible, but at the moment, finance has really an important and crucial role in our societies. And therefore, for the implementation of the whole Paris Agreement, we need a lot of money, which can sound really bad, but that's the fact. And in order to move this money, there are some points that had been written, which is the Article 6, and now we need to implement it. The point is that till COP25, countries couldn't agree on how to do that. There are some points that are agreed, but some others that are not. I'm not gonna dive into the details of Article 6 because it would take a lot of time, but there are really a lot of issues and different kind of ambition between different countries. So there are countries that are actually pushing for a more ambitious Article 6, and there are other that you know, don't want to rush that much. Of course, these are the words that they're using. What we are expecting at COP26. First of all, we really need the Article 6 to be finalized, which means we need that the rule book about Article 6 is written down and approved by the countries. Because otherwise, there will be, even if all the other points get resolved, which it's kind of utopistic, but we can hope for that. Even if everything else settles, if we remain with this giant hole about Article 6, it means that a lot of projects that are based on this article, financial, economical projects between countries, parties, could slow down or could even not start. So it's really important to get an improvement on this article. But there is also another issue, with which I also agree, by the way, and it's that Article 6 has to be written down in a correct way. I already discussed about this other times sooner than today. And the problem is that given the importance of these financial investments, if there are loopholes or if there is something missing in this Article 6, there are countries or even private companies and any level of policy making and decision taking that could seek advantage from these loopholes in order to not take actual action on climate. So a bad designed Article 6, and this I think must be clear, most of the activists, like climate activists, support this thesis. And a bad designed written Article 6 could be worse than not finalized Article 6. This is because when you approve it, given the time that it took to write it down and to actually arrive at the end, we could have this article, we could be stalled in that situation for many years to come. So either we obtain a well-designed and well-written Article 6, resolving problems such as double counting, which at the moment is actually a possibility. So at this stage of the of negotiations, there's actually the possibility that double counting comes into the Paris agreements. So everything becomes about how to account emissions instead of how to reduce them. And this could be a huge problem. So either these kind of problems get solved, or it's actually better not to have an Article 6, because we can discuss like in the next 2 months, in the next 6 months, but if we finalize it, we are stuck with it for many years. What about pre-COP and the intermediate negotiations in June, July, I don't remember. Not much was said, so we actually don't know a lot of what was going on, because most of the negotiations between I'm thinking about in particular about pre-COP negotiations between technical experts was with closed doors, so we don't know what was happening inside, and not a lot of information came out. I also tried to ask, but it seems impossible to know. There have been some informal negotiations but technical level, not ministerial level, in these few weeks. So I don't remember, it's like since half of September that these negotiations are going on twice a week. But it's technical discussions. So as you may also see at the during the first week of COP26, during a thing that I remember quite well while I was following them is that the members that take part to these negotiations say clearly that there are some points on which they can't take decisions because it's political decisions, so they have to wait. So it becomes really even complicated to go on, because you have political issues mixing with technical issues, and so it's slow going on. And therefore not much has been done since previous COP25. So we expect actually for the most of the decisions to be taken during the second week of COP26, when there are the ministerial negotiations, but we expect to have the final drafts with the possible text during the first week. So we'll be watching, but I know a personal remark. I'm trying to be as fast as I can. I'm not really optimistic. I have to be honest. And if I may, just other 2 minutes, then I'll pass the floor. I want to remark that Article 6 in the Paris Agreement, the finance itself, don't have to be looked as the solution or even as a solution, because, and this is a personal remark, so it's not about what's actually going on during negotiations, and different, I mean, even different activists have different point of views. Well, as I told sooner, we are in a society where economy counts almost the most. So decisions are taken almost exclusively based on economical reasons. This is why when we talk about the climate crisis, when we hear about it around with our friends, relatives, and so on, we hear people talking about the green jobs, the investments that can be done thanks to the climate crisis. And we hear this much more than hearing about the fact that people are actually dying or suffering and other things like this. So economy is a strong driver. I don't really appreciate that. And in this kind of society, I think that Article 6, or in general finance, is a crucial point to slow down the climate emergency. But we actually have to think about a cultural discussion and to start discussing the fundamentals of the society itself in order to overcome this. So when I'm assisting to Article 6 negotiations or in general other things about finance, I'm not looking at them like the solution to the climate crisis, because it's improbable in this kind of society. But if, for example, this text is well written and implemented as it should, as it is intended to be, we may actually gain time. So, or at least we can slow down the worst effects, because like a good finance, implemented finance for the climate crisis at the international level can lead to a switch in the economy on investments and so on. It can actually, if you go and read, we can talk in detail if you want later. It can lead to such movements of money that it can actually sting the economy. So this is important, but it's also really risky. As I told sooner, there are plenty of countries who are trying to obtain, for example, double counting, or the carryover of Kyoto, of the Kyoto units. And there is also a question about with which levels of emissions are we comparing the one we are reducing, because we are talking about reduction compared to something else, to some historical period for the country or at the international level. We are talking about how much emissions are left to us. It's not about a complete stop of emissions. It's about a reduction compared to something. So something we have to focus when we are listening to these negotiations is also the time, the period to which we are comparing those emissions, or what we are reducing when we hear about percentages, compared to what. So those are important questions, and the civil society has to push on this, because 10% can be a huge, like really a big reduction, as much as almost anything, almost nothing. I mean, if you take the peak and you have already started to reduce, and then you say, oh, we want to reduce about 50% compared to that peak, there's actually the chance that you're probably almost there, and it's absurd. So it's really important to what we are comparing those emissions with, and that we put pressure on this. So, okay, just to sum up, during COP26, we want this article to be finalized because it's of the utmost importance in the framework of the nowadays society and so on. But this Article 6 can't just be finalized for the sake of finalization. It actually has to work. Otherwise, we'll be stuck with it and it will be bad. So I hope it's been clear. And I don't know, Domenico, if you want to pass the floor.
Yes.
And if someone has questions, just ask. I can dive into it. I just want to do more general remarks.
Okay, thank you. Sure, yes, we can interact also in the chat, and also I'll share the Discord channel in the case you want to go also there. And I will now recall the other speaker, Samuel Adunreke, properly stressing the point of climate finance. So from you, Samuel, I want to ask to you the role of climate finance, also standing the Paris Agreement, and which are the main application of climate finance also at the national and local level. So the floor is to Samuel. I don't know, maybe Samuel has some glitches. Yeah, okay. In the meanwhile, maybe Samuel has some glitches with the connection. Maybe, okay, we want to also address some question to Vladi in the meanwhile. Okay, I will make also to you the question indeed. So how can you a little bit address the topic in your speech, but how can climate finance can impact in a local level, for example? Now we were talking about Article 6 Paris Agreement, that are these high level decisions and so on. But how they can affect the more lower level, like national and local level also in the flows of climate finance. Oh, I think that Samuel is back. Just one moment. Hi, Samuel.
Yeah,
Are
thank
you
you
there?
very much. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Samuel.
Thank you, everyone.
So I will repeat for you the question. If you have some problem with connection, we can also leave with the audio. Don't worry for the video.
Yeah.
And my question was, we talk about climate finance, and on the lights of the Paris Agreement.
Like the previous
Sorry, Samuel. Maybe you can turn down the video.
before, on the issue of climate.
So you can turn down the video, Samuel. Okay, just a moment. We will let Samuel connect with another. Samuel, I will let you connect by Google Meet. That is lighter. In the meanwhile, Vlad, if you can respond to the question.
I think it's okay now.
Ah, okay. Go ahead.
I think it's okay now. You can hear.
Yeah. Go. I was asking about how we can implement also climate finance at the local level, and how it's important in the light of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like the distinguished speakers have said, and the immediate previous speaker, you mentioned the fact that pre-COP there hasn't been much deliberation, but we all look towards COP26, and in the build up to COP26, I think it's a time when parties can come around and decide on what to do, particularly businesses and civil society organizations, and of course development finance institutions, because the the article says is about finance and economy, and they're going to deliberate about the impacts, the economic impacts of climate change on economies, on people, and the positive and the negative outlook of it. So considerably, it will be nice and fair and just as well. And as part of climate justice, to consider how developed nations can actually find the proper targets for emissions, and that's where the place of carbon pricing comes in. And of course, to some extent, Europe has shown some leadership through some of the Green Deal, and the Green Deal has some objects embedded within it that considers a whole lot of financial prospects and carbon financing prospects within it. And for instance, carbon trading, it's considered in the EU Green Deal. So I think it's the Europe as a developed continent has shown some leadership in trying to help mitigate the effects of climate change. And then when we look at a holistic approach where development finance sectors, private sectors can come into climate finance, is a place where OECD countries can come into agreement and see how they having a systemic approach to financing. And of course, I think to some reasonable extent, private organizations, private individuals have committed a whole lot of funding in that regards. We've known about multinational companies, technology giants across the globe that have committed into carbon-free emission technologies and important sectors like the aviation industry, telecommunications industry, and of course the high city industry. So when Bingo representatives from Bingo, from civil societies, from farmers can actually work together to make a unilateral decision on what financing prospects for climate change should be. And it is important also to mention that indigenous people are now being factored in as a caucus to work on also decision making as regards and as particularly affects them directly. So further suggestions is just that there should be some unilateral engagement for continuing with the Kyoto Protocol, and of course to see how to effectively put on hold the Business International Nigeria, to put on hold, to put into play what has been on hold, and particularly to aspects of Article 6 that are not yet implemented. So I think COP26 will give a guide to working around developing on inputs and commitments, particularly like the Technical Executive Committee. The last speaker spoke about the technical aspects of it. Yeah, I will include also the economic aspects, the political aspects, and of course, the social aspects. All of this must come together as part of the CSP models, and it should be really, really important that cross-cutting aspects of development are considered, and to see how financing local adaptation, local-led mitigation projects in cities, in rural and centers that are in the integral parts of most nations can be involved, and a whole lot of inclusion can be in place. And finally, it is also considerable advantage for the whole society approach to be put in place, and particularly cities are already making commitments in the aspect of climate finance. We've known of C40 cities, we've known of a lot of mayors, covenants of mayors coming together to finance, and we've known about on the UNDP having its own special finance, the World Bank having its own special finance, and I think multilateral development banks to have their own finance scheme. So it is important that all of this be integrated to see that, okay, after COP26, there's going to be a particular institutional framework for financing climate mitigation and adaptation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel, for your very complete answer. And thank you so Vladi for giving a framework on Article 6. And now let's move on. We like to understand the main framework on climate finance. That is like this very technical matter, but so important for addressing climate change and also to like impact in our lives. And probably on that, an opinion good to Vladi and Samuel regarding the how to in a way foster like climate investments. So how we can mobilize the climate finance through, I don't know, some criteria for sustainability. I don't know, how do you, as far as I know, also the banks and the finance sector is moving for shifting from fossil fuel investment to climate investment. So the floor to Vladi and then to Samuel.
So, well, I'm not actually an economics expert because I'm actually a math student, but nevertheless, I think it's already happening. The problem is just time. And by that, I mean the speed at which this shift is proceeding. So we can actually, we can already see banks or financial institutions de-investing from fossil fuels and investing into into greener sectors or climate resilient sectors, or eventually those that are looking at a more sustainable way. So this is already happening. I'm thinking, for example, just yesterday or 2 days ago, I don't remember, AOC and, well, you may know her, I don't know. Well, the city of New York, the city or the state of New York decided to disinvest all its pension funds money from fossil fuels into green economy. So these things are already going on. There are banks that are moving away from fossil fuels. The problem is time. And I don't usually like a lot to put the pressure on this private citizen, because you know that the climate crisis is driven by mainly by this fossil fuel sector that it has his grips into economy and society. But nevertheless, I think that it's even important the consumer choices. So, for example, where you are investing, if you're investing money, where you're investing them, where you're taking them. But it's also eventually what are you buying and so on. But for example, another point is that most companies now are doing like climate evaluations regarding the resilience of the investments. So banks, for example, won't invest in projects that are leading to more climate crisis simply because it's on the long term they are losing money because, you know, simply because of things happening around us. I mean, climate disaster and so on. So they are moving from that, and they are always more frequently doing studies and evaluations about the climate risks. So projects and investment have to have a part evaluating these risks because they are actually always bigger. So what we can do, I don't know. I don't have the answer in particular to this, but it's about, you know, when you're taking any kind of action. So it can go from buying a house to whatever else the private citizen you're doing. Do that choices also based on this. So know where you're investing. But as I told sooner, this applies more to at least the company level. So for example, if you're working in a company, usually you have more decisional power on finance than a single citizen. And I want to link the international level to the local one. These agreements, these points that I was talking about sooner, like Paris agreements on, they actually give also a framework for companies, or at least this is what some negotiators are trying to do. So we are moving to an Article 6 that involves also the private sector. The private sector means also not only big institutions, big financial institutions, but it means also fostering the investments on projects between smaller companies. And this is important. So those kind of decisions financial decisions are driven principally by from high levels. So it's really complicated to push from the civil society. This has to be done by simply showing that it's actually a point of interest. So I repeat again, when you are taking financial decisions, base them on also the climate issues. Yeah, I think that's all. I wanted to, in particular, to address this point that what's going on at the international level doesn't stay there. So Glasgow doesn't stay in Glasgow, or I don't know, Madrid in Madrid, as it happened 2 years ago. It actually has an effect on our everyday life, or at least it may have if we obtain some results on this Article 6, because it involves also the private sector and companies. Okay, I don't want to go over with my time, so I don't know if you have some more deeper questions.
Thank you, Vladi. Yes, in the meanwhile, I invite the participant to pose the question for the speaker, but I also let Samuel to respond to the question. Question was addressed to Booth. So Samuel, to you.
I think Vladimir actually pointed out the most important aspect of it. Business governance always considers the risk factor and disaster risk aspect of financing climate projects, and particularly as a form of leadership, environmental and social governance. Companies are also, I think, mobilizing efforts to see that they get involved in the process of environmental and social governance. And of course, that's considered climate investments, and of course, their social activities as related to environmental sustainability. But in the area of divestments from fossil fuel, a big global shift from fossil-based fuel investments, I think it's a lengthy process, like he said as well, that it's going to take a lot of time. And of course, most of these multinationals are considering the long-term risk and the long-term plan they have to put in place to ensure that they have a seamless flow of their investments that are climate related, and to make sure it doesn't affect their business and the economic and the balance of the two. And most importantly, when considering the aspect, the social economic aspect of what climate risk means. And of course, cities as well are considering all of this, and to some extent, some nations, some developing nations find it easier to adapt to the climate risk, because there hasn't been much devastation. However, the climate change has a potential risk if actions are not taken in that regard. So financing sustainable green infrastructures is important for the transition to be accelerated, especially for countries, developed nations, for instance. And but the whole divestment has gone green, but people have to consider that, okay, the green investment should be tailored around what these investments really, after some long period of time, don't eventually turn back to cause devastation on the environment. So it's the environmental impact, the long-term environmental impact is being factored into financing projects. And when it comes to delocalizing and, of course, restructuring of the financing of fossil fuel, there are some petroleum investments, petroleum countries that there are projects that are already been licensed already, but it has some of their infrastructures have a long time lifespan, and to meet up with the lifespan, or probably model up with the current storage of natural gases, for instance, that they have, it has to take a lot of time before they finally take decision on divesting fully into probably decentralized renewable energy systems, or onshore technologies or offshore technologies. That's as regard renewable energy. So it's a whole lot of hurdle to cross. And I think it's a process, like Vladimir has said, and the process has just begun, has only begun. However, small companies, however, can actually take decisive decision on their own parts in ensuring sustainability is considered and put in place in their day-to-day operations, and to reduce carbon the carbon targets, and to reduce the overhead carbon footprints. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. So we have space for a few questions, just a few minutes. I don't know if someone has some questions for the speakers. I'll also invite you to join the Discord space that now I will share on the chat, and also to fill the open document of the track. As usual for the Climate Social Forum, we are sharing an open document where you can put your ideas into the Talanoa frameworks. I don't know if there are questions. If no, great. Thank you to Vladi and Samuel for their precise and expert responses and answers to the question of the round floor. Oh, sorry, I saw one thing in the chat. Yes, sorry. While focusing on rural, urban communities marginalized, I think there is also a part on the back. Maybe you can check the chat, guys, to respond to Rafael.
I think he's still typing, because I think there must be a second part.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just considering the integrative aspect of development that has to do with mainstreaming of gender and inclusive participation of rural dwellers. I mean, Raphael, or if he could come up to make a presentation of his idea on the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I really loved what you fact, especially to the youth, especially here in where I'm chatting from. Yeah, I'm from Nigeria. criteria, and the program also it gives me a kind of a mindset where I looked at the mental health situations and how this health issue mitigates in fact rural settlement. So when I look at this, the whole problem, in fact, is a global problem and needs a global actions to be taken, a kind of collective responsibility. So I am in full support with what has been said. And when you look at it, even over to the military, there's still conscription, and even outside conscription, there's still a lot more issues that is being faced there, where proper funding and other issues are not being well addressed. So all these are as a result of climate issues. So it affects both the rich and the poor. So I really appreciate that fact. That's why I did a kind of recommendation or suggestion and a kind of stuff like that, if it could be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. It's well recognized, and coming from the fact that you mentioned the military aspect of it, I think there was a time Yongo came up with divergence in the classification of climate actions, and of course I wouldn't know if it is Yongo or some other international organizations, coalitions. So they mentioned the military response. Okay, I think it was the Global Center on Adaptation. They mentioned military response to climate change. So when you came up with that point, I think I remembered vividly how important it is to consider militarizing the climate ambition, because it's a collective agenda, collective global agenda, and it requires local and global governance as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raphael, also for your contribution, and thank you, Vladi and Samuel again. For the sake of time, we will stop here the question and answer, but I invite you to join the Discord channel and to engage there also some discussion, and also share the link to the open document to put your inputs on the Talanoa structure. So